So, you're Jimmy the Gent Burke. You've just come out of prison and were looking to make a splash. And given your years robbing trucks, you knew just the place. The Lufthansa heist would be your masterpiece, your magnum opus. You'd managed to do what other criminals could only dream of, successfully execute the biggest heist in US history. But as smoothly as the actual heist was, as much planning and effort you had put in to cover every possible angle, what you didn't account for is the greed, recklessness, and really sheer incompetence of those around you. And you really didn't help the situation either. In fact, you made things even worse. Even though this would be the biggest score in your criminal career, enough for you to retire, it would also be your undoing. One of the standout characters from the iconic film Goodfellas was suave Jimmy the Gent Conway. We see him in the flashy suits, throwing money around and getting respect from everyone around him. But what was he like in real life? Well, in many ways he was actually toned down for the film. His real-life story was actually crazier than what we see on screen, something quite rare. But how did it all begin? How did this Irishman end up working so closely with Cosa Nostra? Although not a made man, he still enjoyed many of its benefits, ending up as one of the respected and feared men in the criminal underworld. And how did it actually end for the Gent? To really understand this complicated character, we have to look at who he was before the glitz and glamour. So join me as we discover the real story behind the infamous Jimmy the Gent Burke. On July 5th of 1931, he was born to an Irish woman named Mary Conway in New York City, but he was placed into foster care at the age of 2. Ideally, he would have been cared for by loving parents, but instead he wound up switching homes for the next 12 years. To say he had a rough childhood would be a massive understatement. But soon, he finally caught a break. He was then adopted by the Burke family, who, unlike his other foster parents, actually took care of him and treated him well. So well, in fact, he ended up taking their last name. But with the trauma and suffering he faced early on, even with these great parents, even they couldn't keep him away from the lure of the world of crime. By the time he was 18 years old, he had partnered with Dominic Cersani, Remo, as he was often called, who was an associate of the Colombo crime family. They would go on to start running a few different schemes. Their most lucrative scheme was passing bad checks, which lasted a few months, until Jimmy got pinched. During questioning, the cops pressured the 18-year-old Jimmy to give up his associates, but he didn't give them a thing. And this brought him to the attention of a lot of people in the criminal underworld. Building a reputation of being a stand-up guy, he would spend the next 5 years in prison. But with this reputation, he had made quite a few friends on the inside and garnered quite a lot of respect. And so, Jimmy had learned the two most important things in life, which were to never rat on your friends and always keep your mouth shut. When he was released from prison in 1954, his foster father got him a union job as a bricklayer. The already quite imposing Jimmy, standing at 6'3" and 230 pounds, combined with his strenuous manual labor, in addition to his time behind bars, all toughened the young Jimmy and made him be seen as a potential asset for the high-profile gangsters in the criminal underworld. And soon, his name and reputation would reach the man that would change his life forever. Paul Vario. Vario was a top capo in the Lucchese crime family. The two became friends and not too long after became associates and began working a lot more together. Given his intimidating aura, Jimmy soon became one of the most feared debt collectors in the city. By the late 1950s, Jimmy Burke had transformed his small operation into a money-making machine, and kept the money flowing to Paul Vario and the Lucchese crime family, making a lot of powerful people a lot of money. But this was not his biggest moneymaker. He soon found more ways to monetize those indebted to him. Jimmy Conway would soon become a master in truck hijacking, and with this, he would soon be making money hand over fist. Here's how it works. Step 1. Some of his biggest customers happened to be the employees at the local airport, and so Jimmy offered them a way to wipe their slates clean if they could do him a favor. You see, millions of dollars in cargo flowed in and out of the airport every month, and Burke wanted a slice. So all he wanted was a tip-off on what trucks were carrying valuable merchandise, which could be anything from jewelry to fur coats and even cigarettes. Step 2 was then to follow the trucks until they were in his territory, in which he and his crew could jump on and essentially make the drivers an offer they could not refuse. Step 3. Once all this cargo was in Jimmy's hands, he would then get his associates to sell it at a discount, making the mob nearly pure profit while also giving those buying the cargo a deal. This would prove Jimmy's best scheme yet. Everyone was making money. He was now a valuable earner for the Lucchese crime family. But now he wanted to expand the crew. But wait, let's back up a little bit. Normally, Jimmy should have never been this powerful. After all, unlike practically every other big-timer in the mob, Jimmy was not actually Italian. He was Irish. This meant that Jimmy could not become a made man. This was extremely important during this time period for two main reasons. On one hand, only made men were allowed to become ranking members of a mob family. Since these positions were associated with increased power and influence over the running of the family, not being able to become one meant that his influence within the family had a bit of a glass ceiling. The second and perhaps more important issue is that being a made man protects you from other mobsters connected to other families. This is because in the criminal underworld, it's fair game to take out low-level mobsters or non-Italians. But if you take out a made man, you can expect at the very least to be a target for assassination, and at the very worst, start up a full-on mob war. As a result, made men were very rarely taken out while doing their business, at least by other families. So as for Jimmy, well, Jimmy didn't have this luxury. Although normally this would limit most men in his position, it really didn't matter too much. He managed to find a way around it. He had managed to build so many relationships, making so many powerful people a lot of money, he unofficially earned that protection. At the same time, he was also able to use this to his advantage by not embroiling himself in the politics of the mob hierarchy, and was able to focus on what really mattered most, making money. It was this that made him valuable. So valuable that despite not being a capo, he was able to recruit Italians like Tommy DeVito. So despite not having the status of actually being a capo, for all intents and purposes, he had the power of one while not having to deal with all of the politics. And if someone like Tommy could become a made man, all those privileges would spill over onto him as well. This status also allowed him to connect really well with other non-Italians, such as Henry Hill, and it was this connection that ultimately helped make his men more loyal to him. In terms of protection, Jimmy still didn't have too much to worry about. After all, while he was technically unprotected, he had guys like Henry and Tommy that would go to war for him. And what happens next? Well, would establish Jimmy's reputation across the country. The Air France heist. In 1967, at around midnight, Jimmy and his crew walked into the airport pretending to look for their lost luggage. While the security guard was on his meal break, the mobsters walked into the terminal, used a duplicate key to unlock the door, and then took the money without raising any alarms, firing any shots, or hurting anybody. Walking out with multiple bags carrying $60,000 each, the total payout was a whopping $460,000, which in today's money is equivalent to about $3.8 million. The crime was not discovered until a Wells Fargo truck arrived the next day to pick up the money and found nothing. At this point in time, Jimmy was over the moon. Now a high-profile gangster, there was nothing he wouldn't do, and thanks to his system of bribes, he got away with the Air France heist with absolutely zero consequences. For Jimmy and his crew, life couldn't get any better, and unbeknownst to them, they had hit their peak, and now things were only going to go downhill. In 1970, he got involved in taking out a made man, something you simply do not do. Billy Batts. May 29, 1970. A man by the name of William Bentvana, but mostly known as Billy Batts, a made man in the Gambino crime family, had just been released from prison, so he threw a welcome back party. When he sees Tommy, he begins to make small talk and jokingly asks if he still shines shoes. Tommy takes this as an insult, and this soon escalates into what is almost a full-out brawl, just in time where Jimmy stepped in.
Now go home and get your shine box. Mother... Yeah. Come on. Let him go.
While things quiet down for a bit, 2 weeks later, Tommy returns. At Henry Hill's club called The Suite, Bat wanted Jimmy to give back one of his operations that he had taken over while he was in prison. Soon, Tommy came in, and Bats went in once again on Tommy and his outfit. You know, more shinebox jokes. He didn't get tired of making them, it seems, but for Tommy, well, that was the last straw. Now, I'm sure you know what happened next. Billy is then buried in a remote area. This was not good, but for now, no one knew actually what happened to Bats. It was only a matter of time until the bosses find out what really happened. If that wasn't bad enough, a 1972 arrest threatened to mess with his plans yet again. You see, Jimmy had beat a man because he owed a large gambling debt, in which he was caught and sentenced to 6 years. And while it's not enough to derail his mob career, it's enough to leave him at a low point. After all, despite his best efforts to create a money-making scheme, he essentially became broke for a 6-year period. So when he got out in 1978, he had to make a splash. The Lufthansa heist. December 11, 1978. At a cargo terminal at New York City's John F. Kennedy International Airport, over $25 million worth of cash and jewelry had been stolen, making it the largest cash robbery in American history. And I'm sure you know who was behind it. Now, we'll need to discuss the heist itself some other time. As interesting as it was, we want to focus on what happened after it and how this ultimately catapulted Jimmy and his crew to a whole new stratosphere, but also would end up being their downfall. So after they successfully got their hands on all this money, a combination of greed, lack of foresight, and to put it quite bluntly, sheer stupidity put them in a position where they just couldn't handle it. All this money blinded them and made them unable to think straight. You see, the actual airport piece worked like a charm, as the untraceable money was taken from the cargo area without anyone being killed or any police getting involved. So it was actually after the money was taken where things began to fall apart. You might also be surprised to hear, and something I was personally quite shocked to hear, was the fact that even 45 years after such a high-profile heist, only one person was actually convicted. Not even Henry could give enough concrete evidence to convict his former associates. The amount of planning that went into this heist, let alone the heist itself, is quite fascinating. We'll get into it more if you want. Some time had passed since the heist, and then Henry Hill was arrested. Although he was one of his closest associates, he didn't think that he could possibly rat, but that simply wasn't true. You see, unlike Jimmy, who had been involved in the drug business but was not a user, crew member Henry Hill was someone who would regularly get high on his own supply. While this was okay at first, it wasn't sustainable, and soon Henry was becoming a nervous wreck. This caused him to become a lot less rational with his drug operations, and it was this that ultimately led him to getting arrested once again for the trade of narcotics during the height of the war against drugs. Now facing decades in jail, Henry Hill was in a position to get bailed out, but unsurprisingly, Jimmy was at the ready. In order to suss out the situation, he asked Henry to have a meeting with him, which Henry only agreed to do under the condition that it happened in a public place. While there, Jimmy was apparently very jumpy, and while he tried to act like everything was fine, he made one very strange request, that Henry go to Florida to carry out a hit. This was strange because not only had he never asked Henry to do a hit before, but this was all to be done all the way in Florida, where he would have practically zero oversight. Henry finally understood what was actually going on. His time had come. He was now an inconvenience for too many people. Vario wanted him gone for dealing drugs, and Jimmy wanted to make sure he could never implicate him in any way. It was because of this obvious slip-up on Jimmy's part that Henry decided to enter the witness protection program in order to save himself from going to jail. To cement things even further, according to some sources, they had played Hill a recording of a conversation between Jimmy and Paulie about their need to have Henry whacked. And just like that, the gig was over. The days of being treated like royalty and hanging out at the Copacabana were now gone. Henry gave up enough information for the FBI to have both Jimmy and Boss Paulie sentenced to long jail sentences. Jimmy was convicted to 12 years in prison and then increased to 32 years after it was discovered that he took out a drug dealer back in 1979. For the aging Jimmy, this extra 20 years was essentially a life sentence, and in 1996, with 8 years left on his sentence, he passed away in prison at the age of 64 due to a bout with cancer. I know what you're thinking. It all seems a little anticlimactic, doesn't it? But at the end of the day, even with a nickname like Jimmy the Gent, in reality, he was a brutal psychopath. While he was known to have been quite suave and acted gentlemanly, he was a complicated guy, capable of extreme violence at times. Also, it seems he was a lot less intelligent than the film makes him out to be. While he may have been a big earner and a guy with a lot of street smarts, in a world as treacherous as the world of crime was, it doesn't take much to bring it all down. In fact, it's even faster than it takes to build it up. As a result, Jimmy trying to stop his fellow mobsters from turning on him actually made them turn on him quicker, accomplishing the exact opposite of what Jimmy had hoped for. Instead of remaining calm and strategic, he became reckless and unpredictable. This in turn is what led Henry Hill to rat on him and ultimately put him in the slammer. His desire to make more and prove himself in the criminal underworld made him take an unnecessary risk despite already being quite a capable earner. And this, along with his bloodthirstiness, is what helped fuel his rise, but also lead to his demise.